up, everybody? Welcome to Brandon's Face. It's the podcast about a playlist. I'm Jonathan Beardsley.
And I am Brandon May.
Today, we are diving into our favorite rock albums of the year. If you have tuned into any of our previous Album of the Year episodes, you probably know what to expect with this one. The only difference being we are going to be dividing kind of the heavier subgenres, metal, hardcore punk, all of that stuff into a separate episode we'll be doing after this. So, what did you say the barometer was? You were like anything Hawken or lighter is
Yeah,
rock.
yeah.
Okay. We'll be doing some prog. Not all of our definitions will make sense, but we'll do the best we can. But before we dive into our favorite albums of the year, let's talk about the genre as a whole in 2023. What did you think of rock?
So I think rock is becoming more and more mainstream. It's not anywhere near the mainstream as of yet, but guitars are being utilized more in pop music. People are very receptive to it. A
Hmm.
couple of the heavier bands got some fun little TikTok moments over the last couple of years, and this year my list was fucking hard, bro. Like
Yeah.
we had a lot of rock this year that really floated my boat. So I really liked going through my album of the year playlist and kind of re-listening to everything, and I had a lot of fun this time. I had a lot of fun.
I did as well. I think we had a lot of great candidates to choose from, which made it very hard for me to select as well. I
Right.
think like years like 2021, I look back on, it was hard to scrounge up enough candidates for like true contenders.
Right.
This year, we're blessed with the opposite. But in terms of your taste, did you notice anything changing in your taste? Are you listening to more indie again? Or are you getting into new subgenres in rock music?
So early in the year, we'll talk about my favorite rock album of the year for me. Came out pretty early this year and kind of
Same.
sent me on a path of non indie stuff. So this year we had Local Natives, who I'm a big fan of, not make my top five. Spoiler alert. And
Hmm.
the softer music that I have been over the last couple of years, like really been interested in and really diving into, I have just kind of put to the side, and did the whole Toy Story I don't want to play with you anymore, because there's been a lot of rock music that is fucking good. It's like good, and it's not heavy per se, but it is definitely higher octane than what I've been enjoying over the last few years. What about you?
I can say that. I am listening to a lot more indie, a lot more, I mean, I wouldn't call it Midwest emo, but whatever really Rad Records has been doing this last year with like all the kind of Pacific Northwest centric emo, screamo, post-hardcore bands. I've really been enjoying that wave, especially living up here. But I've always kind of listened to a lot of that. I would say indie, and then we'll talk about it in the next episode, but a lot of metal is kind of new to my rotation, at least in the volume I'm listening to it in.
Right.
Other than that, all is always the same with me. You know this. There's a few albums we didn't get to talk about this year that are kind of in my honorable mentions. I'm excited to talk about those with you a little bit later. Should we dive into our top album of the year?
Let's dive in. I'm dying to know what your top album of the year is, John.
So, my top rock album of the year, non-metal, is The Jaws of Life by Pierce the Veil. I went back and
Yes.
forth with this and a couple on my two through five, but this is it, man. This is the one where when I throw it on, I catch myself singing along to more songs than any other album on my list. And I don't know if that's like a barometer for best album, but like that means something to me. If I
For
enjoy listening
sure.
to your album, if I can sing along to it, if I'm still singing along to it 10 months later, just as much as I was when it dropped, all of that means something. I've kind of been waiting for this album. I think their last one before it was 5 or 6 years ago. They went through a change in drummer. Nothing was sure with this album coming out as good as it was. And I don't think it's necessarily better than their previous work, but I think it's just as good, and it is arguably their best album. I love it. I'm still bumping it on a weekly basis. Is this one in your top five, or is it your album of the year as well?
It is not my album of the year.
Damn it.
I really love this album though. It's in my top five. I think I'm doing this off the cuff. We'll see where it actually lands when the words start coming out of my mouth. But yeah, man, it's funny. I put this on, and my wife, who's not like a giant Pierce the Veil fan, but is tangentially aware of them. Every
Sure.
single time I put this on, she goes, "Who is this again?" And that's to me a barometer of like how good that album is, man. Like,
Yeah.
and I also put this on quite often. So I'm glad it made your album of the year, man. I really am.
And for the few listeners we have that maybe have not heard this band or this album, they're typically a kind of emo post-hardcore band. I would say on this album, they went to more of an up-tempo pop rock feel. If that's your bag, definitely check it out. Brandon, what is your 2023 rock album of the year?
Man, I gotta shout out to Dosser. They put out an album, Violent Picture, Violent Sound, and it is my favorite rock album of the year. I listen to this on a
Wow.
weekly basis. I am just enthralled by this record, man. It hits everything for me, man. It's got the catchy bridges, the great choruses, great guitar work. It's got just enough shoegaze in it to make me interested, and just enough of that octane to keep me going. It is a fantastic album. It came out pretty early in the year. It's how I discovered really rad records, and just got a shout out, man. That record label put out a lot of good music this year, but this one hit right for me, and it consistently hits right for me. Yeah, so that's my rock album of the year. What'd you think about Violent Picture, Violent Sound? Have you
I love
revisited
it.
it?
Oh yeah, I have because one day it showed up in my mail on vinyl,
Oh yeah.
and I was like, "Gee, who would send me this?" So thank you, Brandon. Yes, I have revisited this one many times, and I love it. We were just talking at the top of the episode about really rad records and this kind of wave of like we'll call it Pacific Northwest emo, I guess. But
Right.
this is kind of one of the only releases that I would say is a little bit outside of that they did. They did a
Right.
few others, but this is more of that shoegazy, like you said, alternative, a little bit of grunge in their sound. I really like this album as well. Did not quite make my top five, but that is not for lack of quality. It's just like we said, we have a ton of other great contenders. This one I knew would be in your top five. I did not expect it to be your number one. So shout out Dosser, man. That's fucking awesome.
On previous episodes of our album of the year, and this one as well, I really did. What album have I gone back to so often? And this is
Sure.
this is a weekly spin for me, man. At least a weekly spin for me. I listen to this album constantly. I wouldn't be surprised if I was their top listener on Spotify. That's it's the one, man. If I'm not listening to it on Spotify, I'll throw it on the turntable. It's a good album, man. Shout out to Dosser. Shout out to Really Rad for making that release possible. And yeah, thank you guys for the great music. It's what 90s worship or something along those lines. Like it really feels like a 90s record, but it was released in 2023. It's so odd, and it really hit a spot for me this year.
If that isn't a genre, then it should be, Brandon.
I think it's about to
Um,
be.
yeah, let's talk about getting it right a little bit or what you go back to the most. Going back all the way to last year, this is joining your rock albums of the year pantheon now. So last year, I believe it was Porcupine Tree, we're
It was.
correct.
It was.
Are you
Yes.
still going back to that? Like, is that still your favorite album of last year, this many months on?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
never in doubt.
it's a monthly spin on the turntable for me at this point. I don't really seek it out, but it's funny. I every time I'll kneel down to go look for a record to throw on, and it's like it just kind of like stares me in the face, and
Yeah.
it's almost like I'm compelled to just pull it out and listen to it all the way until I hit Chimera's Wreck, and Chimera's Wreckland is one of those songs that like Daft Punk does it too with Georgia by Marauder. If I'm around and that song is on, I'm stopping everything that I'm doing and listening to the entirety of those 9 minutes
Yeah.
because I need to. Like it compels me. And so yes, most definitely I still go back to that one.
Yeah, see, I feel like it's probably because I'm neurotic and have OCD, but I'm always questioning whether or not I got it right. I think my top two rock albums last year were the Drugs album, Destroy Rebuild, and Sweet Tooth by Mom Jeans. I still listen to Sweet Tooth by Mom Jeans all the time. I don't really go back to the Drugs album that much. I
Interesting.
really like the Wet Leg album from last year. I kind of have come around on that one. The Always album is really, really good. I would throw that up there. And Sweet Pill, their album from last year, really, really good. It's kind of interesting that it's not always like what the best album is, it's what you've heard at the moment you're picking your best album, at least for me. But man, we I feel like as much music as we cover, it's crazy that we still have albums that slip through the cracks, you know?
It's really wild, man. I listen to a lot of music, man, and we have a new employee at work, and he was I talk about music more than anybody in the world that I've ever met besides you, and he was throwing artists at me that I'd never heard of, and I was like, what the hell? I was like, you're blowing my mind right now, bro. Like,
Hell yes.
so I've
Love those
got
types of
oh
people.
yeah, man, I've got a few underground hip hop recs from him, so I'm gonna dive into those. But you're right, it's crazy. We listen to thousands of hours of music a year, and it's crazy that there's always going to be one or two that slip through the cracks. I had a in case of slow week break glass playlist that every once in a while when we would have a slow release week, I would throw something on like that Johnny Booth album that I threw on, and
Great album.
the I think it grew to like 2,000 songs or something like that, and we didn't cover half of what I had on there. You
Yep.
know,
That tracks. That tracks for you. The Johnny Booth album was great, by the way. I know that wasn't the
sure
point of what you
was.
were saying,
No,
but
no,
great
no.
album.
You're right. You got to shout it out when it gets there.
All right, let's move on to our two through five. Uh, these aren't really in order, but they kind of are for me. You know, fuck it. Let's say they're in order. All right, at number two, I got Space Heavy by King
I
Cruel.
knew it.
Number three, Would You Miss It by Koyo. Number four, Blame My Ex by The Beaches. And number five, In My Saddest Dreams, I Am Beside You by Dreamwell. This one was kind of teetering on the is it metal? I'm throwing it on this episode. It's not metal enough to be on the
Fair.
metal episode, but it is a phenomenal album and in my personal album of the year conversation. So, King Cruel, Koyo, The Beaches, Dreamwell. Before you dive into yours, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm actually very surprised that King Cruel didn't get your number one. I was waiting for you to
Me too.
I put it number one, and you really threw me for a loop with that Pierce the Veil record. But obviously that King Cruel album is fucking great. I am so glad that you liked that Dreamwell album so much. I think I sat on it for months, and finally was like, you know what, fuck it. Like we
It's
got to
so
cover
good, man.
it.
It's so good. I kept being like, am I overvaluing this one? Like, is it not as good as I'm thinking it is? No, man. Every time I throw it on, it is a banger. Uh, The Beaches, we just covered that one a few weeks ago. I'm
Right,
loving it.
good
Koya,
one.
Would You Miss It? I gave it a 10. Don't really regret it. Yeah, King Cruel. I did go back and forth on that one being my album of the year, but like we said, it just comes down to like what you like most, what you come back to the most, and Pierce the Veil just barely edged it out this year. So
Fantastic.
that's my top five. What's the rest of your top five?
All right, my top five is well, we got Dosser, Violent Picture,
Yep.
Violent Sound as number one. My number two, and these are subject to change. Proto Martyrs, Formal Growth in the Desert.
Wow.
Stephen
Okay.
Wilson's The Harmony Codex.
Mm-hmm.
Koyo, Will You Miss It? And this is where I said maybe on the Pierce the Veil because I think I'm going to go with my number five as being Hail the Sun's Divine Inner Tension.
Yep. Yeah, that's in my honorable mentions. I'm glad you threw it on here.
It,
Interesting top five. Did
it,
not
it's
predict your top two.
it's been a weird fucking year, man. But honestly, I've loved it, and I like how Proto Martyr. It's my number two because it's the second one that I that I go back to. It's weird. It's a weird one for me
Hmm.
though, because I actually use this album to pull myself out of a funk, because it has this kind of building quality to it through the back half of this album with We Know the Rats and The Author, that kind of like really pump it up, and it takes me from maybe I don't want to say a low place, but maybe a low energy place into an area where I can be productive afterwards. And I would throw this on
Yeah,
pretty constantly, you know.
that's awesome.
Stephen Wilson's The Harmony Codex. I think you knew that this was going to be on mine. It's rock question mark, but there was nowhere else to put it,
It is.
so I threw it
Economies
on
of
there.
Scale. Great
Yeah,
song.
absolutely. Obviously, Koyo's "Would You Miss It?" Koyo, I don't know how you pronounce that. Whatever. I was listening to this one earlier today, man, and Sayonara. What I would do is I would put my album of the year rock playlist on and just hit shuffle. And on the way home today, Sayonara Motel came on, and I was like, God damn, this song fucks. Like,
So good. So good,
it's
dude.
so good, man. And then, yeah, of course, Hail the Suns, Divine Intertention, man. That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 track run from Tunnel Vision Alibi to Maladapted it's got to be one of the best 5 track runs in post hardcore, in my opinion.
So good, dude. I had that one. I feel like I had kind of like periphery in that spot for most of the year, but when the Hail the Sun one came out, it just was kind of took its place, man. It's a banger. Thank you so much for showing me them. I've gone back to their 2021 album a few times too, and they're just a great band, dude.
They can get it, bro.
Yes,
Like
they can.
they most definitely can get it. And I don't know if you considered this one kind of teetering on between like rock and metal or whatever, but I think it's more rock than heavier. So I decided to talk about it here.
Yeah, I'll allow it. Um, that's a great top five, man. I think we got it as right as we could for the moment that we're in, but whatever we didn't get right, we can amend now with our honorable mentions. So I've got a handful, and I could probably go on for days, but I will try and limit myself. We'll talk about each one, and you can throw in as you want to as well.
Yeah, let's go.
First one, Boy Genius, The Record. I think this
Yes.
one is a phenomenal album. It's easy to be burnt out on it by this point in time. It is very out there. It is very popular. It's probably going to do extremely well at the Grammys next year, but I'm not a hater, man. This one kind of deserves the flowers it gets, I think. What
I
about you?
I totally agree, man. I have been a fan of Phoebe Bridgers for years, as you know. My wife and I really love her music, and I've been a fan of Julian Baker for a while, and I not so much Lucy Dacus, but when all three of them got together and decided to make this album, which I found out previously that they've actually recorded an EP in
Hmm.
2018 under Boy Genius.
Yep.
But when they announced this album and they put that single out, and I was enthralled, man. And then we watched their Coachella performance live on the stream, and my God, man, it was awesome, like in like the actual definition of awesome. Like it was awe inspired. Like they really got it right. The Record is a really good album. Like you said, they're going to clean up at the Grammys. They didn't need our award, but yeah, I really like
No,
that one.
they most certainly didn't. We could talk about live performances a little bit later, but I feel like they have a handful of the most memorable this year easily.
Yep.
Another one I got, Paramore. This is why this one very hard to cut from my top five in favor of bands like Dreamwell, but it didn't pass the test. I listened to the Dreamwell one more than I listened to the Paramore one. But that should not undercut this Paramore one being one hell of a record. And I don't know, like I think they did, when I go back to it, as good of a job moving forward and pleasing the past as they could have. There's songs like You First in the News that feel very like they're art rock, pop rock, but there is a little of that like punk in there too, just enough to be still Paramore, in my opinion. I really liked this record. Are you still going back to it from time to time?
Yeah, I actually think wasn't it in my top five of pop? I think I put it more in the pop
Oh,
realm
that
of
that is
things.
correct. Yes. Yes, you
Yeah,
did.
I love that album, man. And I think it's funny that I felt more pop from it. But you're right, the punk DNA is still most definitely there. It's not full on punk, but it most
No.
definitely has the DNA still there, and that does matter. They're coming off a fucking giant tour, man.
Yeah.
They really did it, man, and it's cool having watched a band grow from little tiny bands who still use Sharpie on their Converse too,
Hmm.
to these megaliths, opening up for, didn't they open for Taylor Swift at a
Yep.
couple of shows? Like, that's fucking huge for them, bro. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, they've had some huge spots. They can create huge spots. They are one of the biggest bands in the world now. It's kind of weird to come to terms with, and maybe what that means now isn't what it used to mean, but it is true. I think if you ask most people who Paramore is, they will know.
Right. And it's cool. They did a Hawthorne Heights recently toured with an orchestra to do an like an emo orchestra,
Yep.
and we know the gal who was uh, invited to come sing "Misery Business" for the crowd and at the local theater down here, and
Oh
the videos
God.
of it were great. Everybody's getting into it, like it's a. Not only does everybody know who Paramore is, but if somebody were to be like, I don't know who that is, and you'd be like, bet, and you threw on
Yeah.
Misery Business, they would know, even if they weren't a part of that scene at all. That song is way bigger than that song hit the mainstream for sure back in the day. So
Yeah, that song has joined the likes of songs like God. Creep by Radiohead in that
yep.
they were like, we are not playing this fucking song anymore. And then it's just been so long and the song is so big still that they're like, you know what? All right.
Fuck it. Yeah. I think Haley did change the lyrics to it.
I honestly think that song is like I write sins now. Like you just need to play the music. Nobody can hear anything when you're playing it
Yeah,
live.
nobody
It's
cares.
everybody singing it much louder. If you don't
Exactly.
say it, everybody else will. So
Exactly. Exactly.
whatever girl she was referencing in the song has been hypothetical to everybody else. Like it is
Right.
very nice that she's trying to be respectful of, whatever the situation was, but I don't think it's that sensitive.
No, I don't think so either. All right, I have a couple of honorable
Hit
mentions
me.
for you here. Arguably the three biggest rock albums of the year, as far as a numbers standpoint go.
Yeah.
We got Blink 182 coming out with their album. We had Queens of the Stone Age with In Times New Roman. We had Foo Fighters with their album this year. These bands are huge, and they're still chugging out music. I think that with bands that big, you and I are pretty critical of them because of the fact that we know them so well, because we all listen to songs for the deaf on repeat for years, and we also all grew up with Blink 182 and hearing Everlong on every rock radio station and CVS in the world. So, but I went back to all three of those albums, man, and I gotta say that Blink album's great. That Foo Fighters album's really good. The Queens of the Stone Age album actually grew on me. I think I didn't like it as much as I thought I did, and I think I was looking at it through these glasses that were I didn't hear anything new from them, and then I realized suddenly that did I want to hear anything new from? I don't think I wanted to hear anything new from Josh Homme. So
Uh, Blank Foo Fighters. Are we doing least favorites already, Brandon? Did we move ahead?
no, I'm talking about things that are good. These are good albums, bro.
They are albums. I did not love those ones.
I know you
I don't
didn't.
think
I
they're
know you
nearly
didn't.
as like when we did our least favorite rap albums of the year. I truly hated some of those. I don't feel nearly as negative about any of the albums you just mentioned. They are definitely not in my favorites, but they are not my least favorite either. We'll get to that after the honorable mentions.
So
You got
so
any more?
yeah, here's an honorable mention. I've got two more parts to this. Another
Yes.
honorable mention is going to be "Everything Is Alive" by Slow Dive.
Sure. Yep.
Fantastic. It's a really good shoegaze album. I don't want to say fantastic, but
It
it's a
is.
really good shoegaze album. And then one other thing I just want to throw out there, and we mentioned them a little bit because of the way that we are, but Really Rad Records had a just gigantic year of releases, in my opinion. And I'm just going to go through a couple of them. We've got Yes Yes 1,000 Times Yes with their album Super Infinite Dance. I go back to that one actually pretty often. It's a really good one, man. We have let's see here. We've got Broken Record with Nothing Moves Me. I don't think that was quite your speed, but I actually went back to it and kind of
No, I
listened to
like
it.
that one. I like
Okay.
that one.
I listened to it. They've kind of got this similar sound to Wednesday, and I went back and listened to both of those albums back to back, and I gotta say the Broken Record one is better than the Wednesday one. Just throwing
Yeah,
that out
didn't love
there.
the Wednesday one.
Mauve released About the Weather, and that CD has still just stayed in my wife's car. Every time we throw it on, we get oh my god on there. We've got Swiss Army Wife with Medium Gnarly, just absolutely stunning emo album.
Banger.
It is
Yep.
it is nothing but bangers on this one, and it was almost a struggle to keep it off my top five. If we were doing a top 10, I think it might be
Same.
there.
Same.
And then one album that I really wanted to highlight, that really kind of shows off how versatile this label is, and how good of an ear Gart has. We have Day Aches with One Last Dream Before Dying. I think we touched on it a little bit. I think it was probably a busy week or something like that, but I've gone back to it, and dear God, man, it's a really good record.
I agree with all of those, Tim.
Right.
Is that all for Really Rad? I feel like there was what, Cobra Yama? Was that a
Yep,
different one?
Nope, Kobayama was this year as well. I just kind of breezed through my favorites, but I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
there's a number of different
Dude.
albums.
Yeah, they absolutely crushed it, man. I had Swiss Army Wife and Mob in my honorable mentions as well. Really, really good shit from them. I'm looking forward to seeing what they release next year.
Same.
Did you have another part to your honorable mentions, or was that the last part?
One last one. I got to shout out Youth Fountain, Together and Lonesome.
Oh, great one.
Just a
Yes.
pure pop punk album. And again, this kind of goes back to there's so much good rock music out there right now, and not all of it is rock and roll like AC/DC and the Who, but there's so much good guitar music out there that, like, even just pop punk and just emo, I could make a top five on those genres alone, and that is huge for the genre right now. In fact, I do have one more now. Looking at my list,
What's that?
Psychedelic Porn Crumpets, Franzoli. Like, we had a lot of good rock albums that came
Yep.
out this year, man.
Yeah, I that one was very recent, so I feel like I haven't sat with it very long, but
Same.
again, you're right. It's crazy that we've had that many good releases to where that one's kind of still under the cracks more or less.
Right.
Yeah, I got two more.
Let's go.
Movements, Ruckus,
Yep.
really, really good record. And one we did not talk about on air yet, Blonde Redhead's album, Sit Down for Dinner. Have you heard this at all?
Yeah, you sent it to me, didn't you?
I think I did. I honestly
Yeah.
don't know. Did you listen to it at all?
I did. It's a really good album, man.
Yeah,
It's good stuff.
I threw their song Melody Experiment on the rock playlist. It's a really, really good one. I highly recommend you and anybody listening check that out. It's kind of like indie pop rock, a little bit of gaze to it. Great
Yep.
shit.
Cool.
All right. I got a couple least favorites. Uh Beartooth, The Surface.
Hit him
Let's
with
just
the
get it over.
riff.
Hit 'em with the riff is probably the worst thing I
Oh
heard
my
this year.
God.
I don't know what the actual name of that song is. I don't think anybody knows. There's no way to find out. We'll never know. Um, and this one I'm just gonna put in a slightly separate category. This is the not mad, just a little disappointed category, and that is the Silver Chord by King Gizzard. I don't love this album. There's some moments on it I like. There's some songs on it I like, but just a little let down for what I was expecting from it. Do you have any albums that maybe you didn't love but didn't quite meet your expectations?
I have an album that I actually dislike.
Hit me.
The
Hit me with the
Used.
riff.
The
Uh,
Used released an album this year, and The Used is, in case listeners don't know,
yeah.
because we don't have many, but The Used is one of my favorite artists of all time. It's the best concert I've ever been to in my life. My wife and I have bonded over The Used, and when I heard that they were releasing a new album this year, it was already in my top five before it came out, and then it dropped, and it really severely disappointed me. And I'm sorry to say that, guys, but that's just is what it is. I did not like that album.
For decades, no, for decades, for probably like 5 years, 10 years, maybe, we begged for the scene that we loved to come back. It did more or less. They came back with an album in 2020. They never stopped putting out albums, but their album in
Right.
2020 was kind of, I would say, one of their big resurgences.
I really
And
liked Heartwork. Yeah.
we have come back to the point now where we are like, this one's not very good. Brandon, we have never been so back with music, buddy. The scene is back. If we're calling albums from some of our favorite bands overrated, this is the best place to be in, trust me.
I totally agree, man. I totally agree, and you're right. I mean, the scene didn't die; you just grew out of it. Is your playlist?
Yep.
I'll link it in the show notes because it's a fucking banger, back to back. But you're right, man. The scene is back in all of the different subgenres that we loved. We've got
Yep.
so much good pop punk this year: Hot Mulligan, Trophy Eyes, Heart Attack Man, Youth Fountain, Knuckle Putt. I
Yep.
could go on and on and on.
Honey
And
Revenge, Hot Mulligan.
exactly.
Yep.
We got great post-hardcore, Pierce the Veil, Story of the Year, Hail the Sun. Like we've got
Old Heads, Yellow Card, Hawthorne
oh
Heights. Yep.
that Amber Lynn EP. Like god damn,
Yep.
man, we had so much good music this year. Even punk is like regular punk rock, like fucking Rancid and Restraining Order and Painted Black. I mean, we've got so much good music. City Windows, I want to shout out. They're a great little small local band out in San Diego. But man, dude, we so much good music this year.
Lie Solution, Scene
Yep.
Breakdown of the Year.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely,
Yep.
man.
Let's lock that one in.
Yeah, and I really hope we get a full album, like an actual, not like a redux from Static Dress this year. But it's so funny, man. We almost never text about the music, but you texted me a screenshot of the breakdown. You were listening to the breakdown. You're like, God damn, man.
It's ridiculous. It's one of the most insane things.
It's great.
It's a perfect place to move on to our most anticipated, since we're already kind of talking about what we want next
Yep.
year. Um, Man, it's hard to ask for more, but all right, let's look at what rock things have been announced for next year already. Bring Me the Horizon, Green Day, Neck Deep, Slater Kenny, Alkaline Trio, Caligula's Horse, The Smile, Ty Segall, Idols, Mother Mother, Mannequin Pussy, Sweet Pill, Sum 41. Out of those, what are you really looking forward to other than Caligula's Horse? Because I know that's your most
I'd
anticipated.
probably put that in metal anyways.
Yeah, yeah, sure,
Just
sure.
just because of the double bass syncopations that they do. But
Nerd.
man, thank you, John. Thank you so much. Yeah, can you list them off again?
Bring Me the Horizon, Green Day, Neck Deep, Slater Kinney, Alkaline Trio, The Smile, Ty Segall, Idols, Mother Mother, Mannequin Pussy, Sweet Pill, Sum
Dear
41.
God, oh my God, man! Mannequin Pussy's album's gonna fucking crush it.
Yep, that's it. That's the
Idols,
answer.
Idols has been. I fucking loved Crawler. They have not released a bad album in my opinion. And yeah, man, I think if we got a Static Dress on top of that, there's our top 10. you know.
Of the albums of bands that have not announced a new album yet, I'm personally hoping we get a new Faye Webster one next year. I would really
Yep.
like a Like Roses full length, or at least a new EP. Any bands that I did not say that were previously announced that you're hoping release something?
It has been. I know it's only been like a year. But I would really love it if Silverstein dropped another thing. Let's
Yeah.
see here.
Anxious.
The Strokes.
Ooh, yeah, we could be due for a new Strokes one.
I
It's
think
been
we're
like
due
four
for a new
years.
and it's funny, man. They keep saying, not they keep saying, but Rick Rubin has mentioned almost over a year ago at this point that he has recorded another album with the Strokes. So I don't know what they're doing, but they're not doing that. So
We'll have to wait and see. All right, man. Any others? Is that it?
You know what, man? Yeah, I got one more.
What's that?
I'd love a new Bad Religion album.
I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet. Honestly, like it feels like that would have happened already
I
with like
th-
how many legacy acts we've covered.
yeah, I think they put one out in 2019, maybe. Let me see here because they put one out recently, 2019. Yeah, Age of Unreason. It was good. I actually saw them that year. It was a good album. It was a good Bad Religion album. I want some more melodic punk rock like that. So bring
Sure.
it back. What do you
Um,
think the new Green Day is going to do? You think it's going to be good?
I'm hoping it's gonna be good, man. I've been going back to really, really old Green Day lately, and I forgot how really, really good it is.
Oh
So
yeah, they're great. They were a fantastic band, man. Warning
I'm
is so good.
God damn it. Yeah, they have some fucking bangers. I don't know what I'm expecting from that, like with where they're at in their career now, but I'm hoping for at least a few good songs on it at the very least. I got a couple more. The story so far, I think that they are very much due for a new album,
I think they're due.
and I would be not a Radiohead fan if I didn't say Radiohead, but with the Smile
Shut up.
releasing a new album, it is not going to be happening next year.
Shut up.
Um,
Yeah. I think those are all great, man.
all right. That does it for our best rock albums and non-metal of 2023. Stick around. We'll be back in a few days with our favorite metal albums of the year. You can find us on Instagram and Reddit. Just search Brandon's Face Pod. Check to the show notes to find the link to the playlist that the show is based on, as well as some other goodies. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.
Peace.